Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Jeremy Walsh, and I'm the Director of Support, Training, and Documentation for BNI Connect. I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar today. Today's webinar is part 5 in a 5-part series. So for those of you that have been with me since the beginning last week, congratulations on making it all the way through, and thank you for being here for another webinar. Today's webinar is going to be on visitors. So we're going to talk about the visitor process in BNI Connect and how BNI Connect can help you through the visitor process and actually make you much more successful at not only inviting visitors, but having them actually show up to the meeting. So again, this completes a 5-part series. The first one was filling out your profile and some intro to BNI Connect. Then we went into how to use the referral process and the slips entering into BNI Connect. Then we talked about how to use the social side of BNI Connect and connect with other people around the world. Yesterday, we went for a little bit of a deeper dive into the system and looked at some of the tools and reports. And today, we're going to talk about those visitors. A couple of housekeeping things before we get moving along with today's content. Firstly, if you are here with me today, it is February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day here in the United States. And you have the added privilege of asking questions. So as we're going through the material today, if you have any questions whatsoever, just drop those questions into the question panel. I would love to hear your questions and be happy to answer them as we're going along today. If you happen to be here on a day other than February 14th, then you are in the future and you are listening to this via recording, which means that you can't really ask questions directly to the webinar, but you can always send a question in to our support desk, support@bniconnect.com. Or of course, you can also send those in with a support ticket by going to the help site, which is clicking on the question mark in the upper right-hand corner of BNI Connect. Now, the other cool thing about today's webinar is you'll notice that there's a handouts section. And in the handouts section, I have put a Word document. This is a manual about the visitor process in BNI Connect. It's a 53-page tome that I have penned up for this entire process. So if you're looking for some good reading material to get yourself to sleep, you are welcome to download a copy of that book. Or if you're listening to this via the recordings that we put up on YouTube and on our support site, then of course just send us an email and I'll be happy to send you a copy of that. All right, so why don't we get started with today's content? And again, I do look to get done by the bottom of the hour with the content portion, though I'm always happy to stay on these webinars until every single one of your questions have been answered. So the visitor process here in BNI Connect is kind of broken into 3 sections, okay? So there's 3 parts of the flow of this process. The first part of it is the actual invitation piece, right? And that's when we can go and we actually invite somebody to come to our chapter meeting. Now that happens before the chapter meeting takes place, of course. You're inviting somebody to a future meeting. The next part of that is that the visitors can be pre-registered. Basically, they can RSVP, or you can RSVP them to the meeting. And there's some great benefits to doing so. And that piece right there is what really, really turns the whole visitor process around. And then finally, the third part of this process is that we have a follow-up system in place for these visitors. And in BNI Connect, once the visitor has been marked as attended the meeting, they also get sent a thank you, a follow-up, and of course we're creating a visitor database for our chapter. And that means that as you have future visitors days, or you'd like to go back and just see who's come to the meeting, or you want to re-invite them back, we now have this information being stored in BNI Connect that you can refer back to. So how does this whole process work? Let's take a look at it right from the beginning here. So this inviting visitors piece. Now I did, for those of you that were here yesterday as well, this is going to be a little bit of a repeat, but that is done, of course, in BNI Connect. So let's flop over to BNI Connect here. This is the live system. Now to get to some of those other functions, you do have to go to those scary places behind the home screen. And to get there, we're going to go to the operations menu, because whenever we're looking to do something or enter something or create something in BNI Connect, really that's going to be under operations. So if we go to operations and then the chapter level, And by the way, I know that we have a couple of directors on the line with us today. For those directors that are here, it will send the visitor invitation for whatever chapter is in your drop-down list. So if you're a director for multiple chapters, right now I'm going to be sending an invitation to the BNI Bird chapter, but if I wanted to send an invitation to, let's say, the Frozen Assets chapter, I would just need to change my drop-down list here to show the correct chapter that I would like to send the invitation to. All right, so that said, we go to Create Email, and then Email Visitor Invitation. Now what this Email Visitor Invitation will do, we'll send a custom, well thought out, well designed by a professional marketing department email to a potential visitor. This takes a lot of the guesswork out. I know, especially as new members, I'm sure a lot of the people on the call today are brand new members to BNI. It's really hard to explain what BNI is until you experience it. You know, a lot of times we lack the words to tell somebody what it's all about. This takes that guesswork out of it so that you can invite them, and then if they need more information, they can go check out the websites, they can check out, you know, the other kind of marketing material that we have built around the BNI experience. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that this is really meant to be a follow-up invitation. BNI is a word-of-mouth, warm referral marketing system, right? And this email invitation is no different. So people should be receiving this invitation having expected the invitation. So I usually like to use this as a follow-up invitation to a verbal invitation. For example, you're at a networking event, you know, in my town. I'm a member of the Chamber of Commerce. Great collaboration with BNI there, by the way. And we have a ton of we have a First Friday coffee, a third Tuesday luncheon, and a second Wednesday of the month we have an after hour. So we're hitting it all hours of the day. That's a great place to meet other people around the state. Inevitably, there's somebody there that hasn't heard of BNI, so we'd like to invite them to come to a meeting. So I'll be at the networking event and say, hey, sounds like you could really use some exposure to my referral partners. I would love to invite you to my chapter meeting this week. Oh, that's great, that's great. When is it? Well, it's on Thursday, 7 o'clock. I'll tell you what, why don't I send you an invitation? Oh, sure, send me the invitation, that's great. Yeah, just make sure you RSVP when you get that invitation. So I'll go to email visitor invitation at that point and just type in their information. Now, you don't need a whole lot of info. All you really need is their name. So let's say that I am inviting Lonnie Meisner, Feigerly. I think I might have spelled that right. And she is from BNI, California. I'll send her to her email address, lonnie@bni.com, and the personal message. Thanks for being on the webinar today. I would love it if you came to one of my meetings if you are ever on the East Coast. All right, so this personal message will show up at the top of the email. And that's really important because that lets the person know that this email is coming from you. It's not just a mass-produced email. Now, the other thing I get asked a lot is, well, can I add a bunch more people in here? No, this is a person-to-person invitation. Again, we are not a spam organization. This wasn't built to, you know, input 100 addresses and blast email, you know, BNI invitations out. This is a personal invite. So I'm going to click send. It's going to wrap this up in a nice little package. And in about 5 seconds, I should get that in my email. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there it is. So note that it went to Lonnie, so I did send a copy of this to Lonnie, and then I get carbon copied on it as well. So that came to my email address as a copy, so that way I know that this went out, and I know what went out as well. So if this template ever changes, then I'll know what was sent out at that point. Now, once again, this is a well put together, thought out email done by the marketing department. So how will you grow your business? Hi, Lonnie. How are you planning to build your business? It briefly explains what BNI is all about. There's a link here that also says learn more about BNI. Somebody can click on that link. It'll take them to the BNI website. And there's some great information about BNI up here on our public website. Now going back to the email here, it also has some other websites, our social media links, and of course the most important thing, your chapter information. So now I did invite them to the Frozen Assets chapter and on Tuesdays at 8 a.m. and we meet at the Cool Breeze Cafe. The best part of this is that they can then click this RSVP Now button. And that brings us to really the second most important part of this. This right here is really, when it comes to visitors, this is where the magic happens, because this is what commits them to coming to the meeting. And this is really the reason why you'll get more visitors to attend the meeting once they register for the meeting. So there's a couple of different ways that a visitor can register for the meeting. So in this invite, there is an RSVP Now button. All they have to do is click that RSVP Now. That will take them to that chapter's. You can see this is for the Frozen Assets chapter. This is a unique URL that is only for the Frozen Assets chapter. So they just need to choose what date they're going to visit. So let's say next Tuesday the 21st. And this is going to be John. I'm just making some stuff up now. And phone number and email address. Now, email address, of course, is mandatory. I'm going to use my email address so I can show you what happens when they register. And let's choose that. And who invited them. And a CAPTCHA code to make sure that we're not a robot. And finally, click Submit. Lets us know that we've now successfully registered, and we look forward to seeing you. Now, in my email, what just came in here, again, the most important part of this is that they are now confirmed to visit that meeting. They will get an email that says, congratulations, you are now officially confirmed to visit the Frozen Assets chapter at this date and this time. Make sure that you're greeted and that you plan for a full 90 minutes, and remember to bring business cards. So all of that, now this is a much more professional way to confirm their upcoming visit. And the fact that they're confirmed is really what turns it around, because I'm sure it's never happened to you, but it's happened to me quite a few times over the year. I invite somebody to come to my BNI meeting and they don't show up. One of the reasons that people don't show up to a chapter meeting is that, you know, when we invite people to a meeting, it tends to be a very informal invitation. So, you know, we're at one of these networking events, and usually you're not inviting somebody to a BNI meeting that's already at a BNI meeting. You're usually at some type of other event. And you know, I'd love to invite you to my networking meeting. Why don't you come to BNI? Okay, great. When is it? Sure, I'll be there. Well, it's on Thursday at 7 o'clock. Great, no problem. I'll be there. Oh, by the way, that's 7 a.m. Oh, yeah, 7 a.m.? Yeah, I'll definitely be there. So what happens on Thursday morning? You know, the alarm goes off at, oh God, 30, and the person looks and sees that the sun isn't even up yet, and they're saying, you know what, this is crazy. I'm not going to a networking meeting at 7 o'clock in the morning. You know what, it's just going to be another one of those giant networking events with 100 people there. Nobody's even going to notice that I'm not there. So they hit the snooze button and they go back to bed and they don't show up to the meeting. Now, they don't know that it's not like any other networking meeting they've ever been to. We have an agenda. Everybody gets a chance to introduce themselves. We have the referrals and the thank you for closed business and all of that transaction that happens at the meeting. But again, they don't know that because they've never been experienced. They've never been shown BNI before. But once they register for the meeting, now they're committed. So they've made that commitment that they're going to show up, and more of them will show up to the meeting. The other thing is that they'll get a reminder. So 2 days before the meeting, they will get an email saying, by the way, hey, John, you registered to visit this chapter. Make sure you show up. And a lot of times, if they're not going to show up, they're having doubts, they're having second thoughts about going, they will then call up and say, hey, by the way, I don't think I can make it this Thursday. Oh, well, can you make it next Thursday? And you can always re-register them. Now, of course, there's always 5 ways to do everything. So you can, if that person doesn't hit the RSVP button, you can also go to Manage Visitors, register a prospective visitor. Essentially, this is the exact same form that they would fill out on the public website. Same information. Still does the exact same process. It sends the confirmation. The other thing it does is that it will notify the chapter so that, well, the leadership of the chapter anyway, the president, the vice president, the secretary, treasurer, all of the visitor hosts and the director consultant will get an email saying, hey guys, guess what? We have a visitor coming this week. Make sure you welcome them. Make sure you have a name badge ready. Why not give them a call ahead of time? Here's their contact information. So it really allows you to be proactive with the visitor system. And as I said, there's always another way to do it, and you can do that also from the regional website as well as the chapter websites. So you have the regional website here. Let's say I was browsing for some chapters, and I'm looking at the Wakefield chapter. Yeah, this looks like a good chapter to visit. I can always click this Visit This Chapter button, and once again, this brings us right back to that form that they can fill out. Of course, just to make sure we don't miss anybody, on the chapter website, there's also a Visit Chapter link. And again, the same form. 4 different ways that a person can be registered for an upcoming meeting, all through BNI Connect. Of course, after the meeting, the visitor hosts, all they have to do is mark that person as having attended the meeting. Then the vice president can approve that for credit in the POMS report. And with that, it allows us to run some reports. Of course, we have the reports, for example. We can see all the people that are registered for a particular meeting. So we can see John Smith here is registered for the Frozen Assets chapter for next week with all the contact information and who invited them. And then we can also look and see, hey, who hasn't shown up to a meeting? And you can run this for any period of time you want to. We can see how many people were invited that were never marked as attended. So I can see, on April 8th of 2014, Mary McKay was registered, but she never showed up. Maybe it's time to call that person back and re-invite them to another meeting. So what this comes down to is, this is all great in theory, but does it actually make any difference whatsoever? So I'm kind of a numbers guy, and I'd like to make sure things are proven to be working. So when this actually first came out a couple of years ago, as I mentioned before, I'm a member as well. So just like you guys, I'm a member of a chapter, and I was on the leadership team at that point. I was the president of the chapter, and this was brand new in BNI Connect. It had only been out for maybe a couple of months, but I wanted to prove that it worked, and we were thinking about having a visitors day. Now, I always follow the visitors days by the book, with the letters and everything else. They've put a system in place. It works. I use it. The only thing I said is, well, how can we incorporate this new thing into it? So what I did was, as we're doing this whole Visitors Day process, that, by the way, guys, make sure that you please register your visitors in BNI Connect so that they get the invitation, the email, the reminders, and everything else. Oh, great, we'll do that. So the week before the meeting, I go and I look in BNI Connect. I'm like, whoa, we have 6 visitors registered for our upcoming meeting. You know, when I went around the room a little while ago, everybody said they had a visitor, and we have 50 people in the chapter. We should have 50 visitors registered. Yeah, not so much. So what I did was I sent them an email. Now, this is not a BNI Connect thing. I just did this as a president. You know, I used a lot of BNI Connect stuff to send this email. You know, for example, if you were on the call yesterday, I used the email my chapter to get everybody's email addresses. This down here is the visitor registration report that I just kind of exported and copied and pasted into the email. This click here link is actually just a hyperlink to the registration page for my chapter. So these are all BNI things that I put into just my own email and sent it out to my chapter. Said, hey guys, we have our big visitors day coming up. We have all of six visitors registered. And we have 6 days left to go. Can you please confirm your visitors by RSVPing them? I sent that out, and immediately my email starts going bing, 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 because I'm getting the notifications as the president that we have a new visitor registered. So the next day, I'm like, you know what? I think I'll send this email again. 5 days until our visitors day, 21 registered visitors, 4 days, then we went up to 26, 3 days, 34 registered visitors, 2 days, 39 registered visitors. 13 hours before our visitors day, we had 45 registered visitors. Now, typically, again, I've been a BNI member a long time. And before BNI Connect, we would do these visitors days, and the week before, again, there was no confirmation process with this. So we'd go around the room, and how many visitors do you have? Any visitors? Oh yeah, we're going to have like 40 visitors here, and like 10 of them would show up. If you're lucky, you'd get 50% of them that would show up. So the next day, we actually had 42 of the 45 visitors show up to that meeting. A lot of it comes down to that reminder. And what happened was the 3 that didn't show up to the meeting, they actually called. They said, you know what, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it on Thursday. Do you mind if I reschedule for another day? And they did. So this process really works. Couple of, about 6-7 months later, we did it again. We had 30 confirmed visitors with 25. I actually just did this, recently in my chapter. The same thing happened. We had 42 visitors at the meeting. This process really, really works, and it all comes down to that registration piece. All right, so this particular webinar is actually a little bit of a shorter webinar. We still have about 7 minutes till the bottom of the hour, but this is also the last webinar of our series. So what I'd like to do is to open this up to questions. Anything that you might have heard in the last 5 days worth of webinars, I'd love to answer your questions. For those of you that will be leaving right away, thank you guys so much for being here and learning more about BNI Connect, becoming a stronger member, and hopefully strengthening your chapter as well. If there's anything I can do for you, please, by all means, pick up the phone, send an email, carrier pigeon, whatever I can do to help. We do have one question from Teresa. If you have invited visitors but it doesn't show up in your PALMS report, how do you fix that? So the actual invitation piece, sending the invitation doesn't do anything, doesn't give you any credit in the PALMS report. But after the visitor has shown up to the meeting, that's when you would get a 1 for your visitor column. So it's kind of the result. So once the visitor shows up, you should get that 1 in your PALMS report. Now, if visitors have come that you had invited and you haven't gotten credit for that, either there's kind of a breakdown in the process, so to speak, and part of it is that with the visitor process, there's actually a number of steps along the way. So for example, you would invite them, but the visitor might register themselves, but then after the meeting, the visitor host has to go in and actually say, yes, this person showed up to the meeting. So they mark them as attended, but then the vice president has to actually approve them. So there's like really up to 4 people that the process could have broken down on. So if there are specific visitors that that showed up, basically talk to your leadership team, talk to especially your vice president, and say, hey, I invited this visitor on such and such a day. How come they're not in my PALMS report? The other important tool for that is to make sure that you are looking at the right PALMS report date and to see that it wasn't in there. So the best place to check that is back on your home screen. You have this My Personal Participation Report. So if a visitor showed up on a certain day, Like, let's say, you invited somebody on December 15th, but you don't have a 1 in your visitor column for that. So this is the visitor column here. So I know I invited somebody on December 15th, but I don't have a 1 here. I want to make sure that I go to the vice president with the right information. Because when you look at the summary PALMS report, that's going to show you everything. So it's hard to say, well, which week exactly was it that that visitor wasn't put in? All right. Teresa, does that answer? I know very long-winded, but does that answer your question? All right. Mary has a question. She says, remind me again how to get to the visitor invitation. So there's actually 2 ways to do that. It could be in your chapter shortcuts. So if you click on chapter shortcuts, if you've put it in your chapter shortcuts, you can just go chapter shortcuts, email visitor invitation. Or you would go from anywhere in the system, you go to operations chapter, create email visitor invitation. So operations, create email visitor invitation. Does that help, Mary? Let's see, Teresa says, how do you view these webinars afterwards? So the best way to view these webinars after the fact is there's 2 ways that you can do it. First is to go to our support site. So you get to our support site, you see this question mark up here in the upper right-hand corner? That is our support site. Click that link, click that question mark. That will take you over to the support site. So here is where you'll find a whole bunch of stuff, documentation and walkthroughs and guides and pretty much everything. Live and recorded webinars. Click that button and you'll see I have all the ones from January uploaded already. So you can review any of the ones from January here. They should all be in there. And then I will be uploading the ones from February as soon as I have an opportunity to do so. I'm hoping in the next couple of days in order to get those all up into the system. So hopefully that answers your question, Teresa. All right, let's see. Virginia says, after the webinar ends, how do we submit a question to you? So there's 2 ways that you can submit a question to us. First of which is you can just email support@bniconnect.com. The preferred method is to click that question mark in BNI Connect. That'll take you to the support site. And up at the top, you should see a thing that says submit a request. This submit a request, you can fill this out. It'll send the question in, and somebody from the support team will be able to answer that. So that's your preferred method, is to go to the help site and send a request. Virginia has a follow-up question. In addition, are we allowed to invite a visitor who is interested in joining a BNI of another chapter but wants to see how BNI works? Can anyone of any industry attend, or is there a conflict with same industry members? So let me give you my opinion on this. And what I will say is, before you do this, please check with your executive director or your director consultant for your chapter. So the way this works in my region, and in my chapter particularly, is we allow anybody to visit our chapter at any time. Anybody at any time. It doesn't matter if you're in conflict. It doesn't matter if the seat's taken. It doesn't matter. If you want to come visit our chapter, you can come visit our chapter. Everybody brings value to the meeting. Some people maybe they will never join, right? Or maybe they're, it could be, let's say, a government official, for example. Is a government official, like the town mayor, are they ever really going to join a BNI chapter? No, probably not, right? Is the town librarian ever going to join a BNI chapter? Is a school teacher ever going to join a BNI chapter? Probably not. Not very likely that they're going to join. However, they bring value because everybody knows a lot of people. And visitors like to buy stuff. So when they come to this meeting, they look around the room and they say, oh my God, look at all of these local business professionals. You know what? I was thinking about getting my roof redone. Why don't I get an estimate? Hey, the mortgage broker said that they have really good rates right now. Why don't I see if I can get my house refinanced? You know, my cousin is looking for a new person to clean their house. Why don't I refer this house cleaner to that person? So everybody brings value, the value of their network, into the room when they walk through the doors. So that goes just the same for somebody that might be in conflict. So, you know, I'm the computer guy in my chapter. If somebody else brought a computer guy as a visitor, I say that is awesome. I do a lot of business with other computer guys, and it's always great to be able to either A, meet my competition, or B, find a niche market that I can work with them. Or what has happened to me quite a few times personally, a couple of years ago, somebody invited a computer guy to the chapter. Okay, so if you pulled up our two websites side by side, you know, his name's Ken Neff, by the way. He's actually still in the chapter. But you pull up our websites side by side, we do the exact same thing. We fix networks and all that kind of stuff. So normally somebody would say, no, that's a conflict. I don't want him in my chapter, you know. But I said, no, bring him in. So he came in, he did his presentation as a visitor, and I said, wow, yeah, all he really wanted to come into the chapter for was for copy machines. That's it. Even though his company was a computer services company, all he did was sell copy machines. Great. I don't sell copy machines. The first week he became a member, I had a $50,000 referral for him. And as it turned out, his company only liked really, really, really big jobs. That's great. I can't handle a really, really big job. They would send me every small client that they didn't want to deal with and helped me grow my business that way. That opportunity wouldn't have arisen if I didn't say, yes, anybody could visit at any time. And you know what? I'm the member of my chapter, and if he was truly in conflict, he wouldn't have been able to apply to the chapter. So again, that's my opinion on that. But definitely talk with your executive director or your director consultant if that doesn't seem to be the case in your area. Virginia, does that make sense? Does that help? All right, Steve. Steve, thank you for the reminder. Steve Elliott, he's an awesome, awesome regional admin in the Arizona and New Mexico and California areas. He reminds me that if you do want to put your shortcuts into the shortcut menu, for example, if you want to put that email, the chapter visitor invitation, go to chapter shortcuts and click that configure button. Everything over here on the left-hand side is the stuff that's in your personal menu. Everything on the right-hand side is everything else that you have access to. So you can just put check marks in the boxes and they'll pop over onto the right-hand side. You can move stuff around, reorder it. That is your shortcut menu to do with as you see fit. Click the submit button to save your changes. Once you go back, it'll refresh the screen once, and there you go. There's my new and updated list. So thank you, Steve, for the reminder. Bob says, how long does visitor information stay in the database once entered? The visitor information essentially stays there forever. So unless somebody goes in and purges the visitors, they will stay there forever. Here's the exception. If that visitor becomes a member during that application process, usually the visitor record gets converted. So that will then kind of disappear out of the visitor database and it just becomes part of their history as a member. So does that answer your question, Bob? Awesome. Do we have any other questions, comments, concerns, compliments, criticisms? All right, if there's no more questions, I'm just going to say thank you guys so much for being here, and I would very much love to see you on future webinars. If you found this information helpful or valuable, please share this with the other people in your chapter, the other people in your area. Congratulations, Holly. Holly is a 5-time webinar attendee, all 5 in a row. You are awesome, Holly. Thank you so much for being here. And on that note, I hope to see you guys on a future webinar, and as always, happy connecting.